Perfect. So what we're going to do today is have a discussion with both of you on what it takes to be Careem, lessons from entrepreneurs who've really made it big in the region, and your personal stories. So I have a lot of questions around how you both deal with each other, because no press interview ever answers that. And obviously, Google has an amazing culture, but Careem has an amazing culture as well. And I think there are always lessons to learn. So that's something we would like to understand from you. And the last thing we want to talk about today is humility is a big focus for culture at Careem, and you've spoken a lot about it. And we'd like to understand what that's all about.
Okay.
And the format, so we have 40 minutes. So I'll give you a few questions, but it's all up to you. And then we'll open up in the last 15 minutes for the audience to take questions. Sounds good? Perfect.
Cool.
And I will settle on with this mic, and hopefully it doesn't fall. All right. So where do we start? So Careem, it's been 5 years now. Where did it all begin, and what triggered it?
Okay, I can start. So, as some of you might have heard, it started a bit more than 5 years ago. For me, the journey was I was happily consulting away as a consultant in the region, enjoying myself. I had been in the Middle East. Now it's been 11 years, so I've been here since 2006. And really enjoyed what I was doing, but my life took a bit of a turn. I had a brain bleeding out of nowhere, and very long story short, I survived, which was great. But it really gave me an opportunity to reflect on life. And what's life? Why are you here? And what's your purpose? And why are we all running around? And what are we going to do with the time we have here? And while I was very happy at McKinsey, I realized that this is not my ultimate purpose. I need to do something really meaningful and big. So I quit and went looking for that purpose. And in the process, me and Mudassir started chatting. And then one thing led to another.
And what for you was the...
So one was just meeting Magnus and hearing his mission was a big part of it. But there were two things that happened in 2011, which is the year before we started Careem, that sort of triggered it. One was I was part of a startup in the Valley that got acquired. So I just had more financial freedom to consider doing something else. And second, in the last year at McKinsey, we were looking to open an office in Pakistan, where I'm from. And since I was thinking of leaving anyways, I volunteered to go and explore it. And one of the things that we had to do was to make a list of clients that McKinsey could serve in Pakistan. And McKinsey typically works with larger organizations, so we looked for larger companies. And I was quite surprised to see that there was only one company in Pakistan at that time, which was worth more than $1 billion. Right? Pakistan is a nation of 200 million people. And there was only one company that was worth more than $1 billion. And forget about the $1 billion mark, that's irrelevant. But the fact that such a large nation of people has only produced one large corporate institution is a bit sad, a bit embarrassing as well, that why have we not been able to produce it? And I often joke with Magnus that he's from Sweden, and in Sweden, out of 4 or 5 million people...
10 now.
10 million? They've produced an Ericsson, a Volvo, an IKEA, and the list goes on, right? So there was some desire to go out and build something really big to prove to ourselves that we can do it. And also hopefully to make an impact in the lives of people in the region. So the fact that I had some financial independence, there was this thing that was lurking in the back, and then met Magnus was the final push.
So the jump into entrepreneurship, a lot of people are budding entrepreneurs. One day I'm going to do something. Everyone says that. Did you have this idea, or did you go through like a list of 100 ideas? How did you hit upon the idea of Careem as such?
Yeah, so we left what we were doing before we had the idea.
Okay.
So we said we want to do something else, and we left. And there were two basic criteria that we put on ourselves. Whatever we end up doing should have huge potential, should have the opportunity or the ability to become very, very big, because we wanted to make a big impact in the region and on the world. And second, it was very important for us for that to be meaningful. So it should not just be about money or building something big, but it should have a more social element of improving the region, improving the lives of people as well. And that's when the process started. And along the way, Magnus can tell us some of the ideas we looked at. We looked at many before we ended up on Careem, but I'll let Magnus maybe.
So the code name of this was actually Project Bamboo, and I think the idea was that bamboo, you put it in the ground and then you water it for a very long time and you don't see anything, and then it just sort of goes up. So we looked at many different ideas, and as typical consultants, we could not really even have a coffee chat without slides. So we actually have these slides, we still have them, that have meaningful on one axis and big on the other axis, and we had plotted different things. Among the shortlist was to do something in healthcare. Okay. We felt that healthcare was very important and the region could need improvements in that area. We looked at education, and we also looked at a bunch of stuff, but one favorite was fish farms. Food is super important. Rising population, rising middle class, people need protein. Fish is one of the best sources of protein, and you can put the fish farm in the middle of the desert. It doesn't even have to be close to the ocean, and you just add some fish and you add some water, and then you get it, and it's perfect. And you even have this sort of the fish version of peak pricing, which is if market price for fish is low, you just keep them for 2 days longer, or then when
keep them alive.
Yeah, exactly. So we were quite excited about this for a little while, and then we realized that we were going to smell like fish every day we came home from work. So we said maybe not. When we first had the idea of transportation, it was from our jobs as consultant, traveling around in the region, and transportation business for the business traveler, transportation was a pain point, right? You land in Riyadh, you land in Kuwait, in Qatar, and you call this one guy that you have on the phone. Because everyone has a guy. Yeah. And I had Noor in Kuwait, Noshad in Doha, Adib in Abu Dhabi. And you call this guy and you say, hey, I'm here, can you come pick me up? This was how transportation was working, right? And you never showed up on time, you got lost on the way to your client meeting, you had to pay with cash, you had to haggle on the price. It was just not great.
Nightmare, yeah.
So, there were people telling us, if you do this, we might be interested to be your first customer. And at first, we were not super excited because this did not look big, and it definitely did not look meaningful. So you get a second chance in life, you survive a brain surgery, and then you're going to go and do like a transportation app. It did not feel meaningful at all. But the more we looked at it, and this is sort of, it has gotten more and more meaningful over the years, but already from the beginning, we realized that there is an opportunity here to really improve the lives of people. On the one hand, customers that don't have an easy way to move around, particularly women, but also men. In countries like, UAE it's easy, but in countries like Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Egypt, it's more tricky. And on the other hand, there is an opportunity to create jobs, right? Yeah. Unemployment is very high. Youth unemployment is super high. Yeah. And at the same time, we don't have any public transport infrastructure in most places. So this was an opportunity to actually build public transport infrastructure, create jobs, and enable people to go and live their lives. So we said, maybe it's actually quite meaningful, and it can actually be quite big. And then to be sure, we named it Careem, which obviously in Arabic means generous, so that we would always remember that the core value was one of doing something generous for the region.
And when you dreamt of making an impact, did you ever quantify, this is where we want to be 5 years from now, this is what big looks like? What was the early vision for Careem?
Yeah, Mudassir, you can talk about how the vision expanded.
So we have been positively surprised on the pace at which things have moved. And from the beginning, we said, let's do something big. So we did the math on how big this opportunity could be. So we knew that we were getting into something big. But I remember when we did our first business plan and presented to investors, we put a mark for 2017, this year, right? So 2012 to 2017. We are, alhamdulillah, 8 times bigger
Wow.
than we expected us to be now. So we really had no idea this
How
would happen
big
so
would be
quickly
big,
and
yeah.
so big. And over time, we have become more ambitious as well. You know, we knew this was a big opportunity, but in the first version of the business plan, we said, let's focus on the GCC. So we said, GCC, it's a big enough market. We are based here. We can tackle it. And then we realized after the first year that this business can be a lot more scalable. So we said, why limit ourselves to GCC? People in Egypt, people in Pakistan, people in Morocco need the service as well.
Yeah.
And we can create jobs and we can provide mobility to people in these markets as well. So we said, let's expand the scope to become the broader Middle East. Then we said, what we're doing is not just movement of people, but we can start moving things as well.
Yeah.
So deliveries and those kind of things. So that added another big opportunity to the mix. And then last year we realized that it's the cities that we are in,
Yeah.
the Cairos and the Karachis and the Lahores of the world, there is absolutely no public transport in these markets. And we saw ourselves becoming the transportation system for these cities. So then we basically said, look, our job is to crowdsource or crowdfund public transport infrastructure.
Okay.
And we will do this in a way that will create a lot of jobs and income opportunities for people.
And is that directly on the map right now?
It is on the map at the moment, right? So, our aspiration is to basically, for the cities that we are in, become the most affordable, the most accessible transportation option. So if even someone is taking a bus, we need to make sure that we make that experience better for that person. If someone is using bikes, we want to be a part of that journey as well. We really literally want to build a efficient and reliable mobility solution for people in our cities. And the opportunity is, of course, massive, right? This is not anything that we had imagined 5 years ago. So every year, the opportunity somehow looks bigger.
Yeah.
So we're just waiting to see what it will be next year now.
So-
because every year we think it's good. This is the maximum we can get to, and then somehow it becomes even bigger.
So from the time that you got your first funding till like you got valued as the uni camel of the Middle East, and like you were valued at like over $1 billion, was there a difference in reaction, or by the end of it you were like, yeah, of course it's going to happen? Like, how has the emotional quotient and the relationship between both of you changed one success after the other?
It all happens a bit gradually, right? So it doesn't happen abruptly. So you're going through it one step at a time, and you're always very busy as well.
You
So-
both, yes, absolutely, I can imagine
So
that.
I think you don't get enough time to celebrate, enough time to reflect. So it's been gradual.
Okay.
We still feel the same that we did 5 years ago. We're not necessarily worried about the day-to-day anymore, like we were until last year. Now we at least have the opportunity and the mental capacity to think a bit long-term.
Yeah.
Few weeks.
Yeah. We, by the way, monitor our growth very like at every 15 minutes.
Yeah, I've been part of your, I think, reaching 500,000 trips or something. Like, it was a big thing, and everyone was awake till 3 o'clock in the morning. Saying, oh, okay. But so, was there any part in this journey that you both fundamentally disagreed? And then, how did you deal with that?
So I was thinking about this. We definitely have disagreements. I mean, that happen quite often, actually. But I think the beautiful thing, and why why I feel so blessed, and I believe I can speak for Mudassir as well. It's fascinating that while we are quite different from our backgrounds and where we come from, we have a value system that is very aligned.
Yeah.
So while we might have opinions or views or a pet project that one of us wants to pursue, or a professional vision this way or that way, on values we are always aligned. So that what happens is that even if we have a strong disagreement on a content topic, I always value Mudassir's view because I know that it comes from a point of values and ethics. So I think we hear each other out. Sometimes we have to say, okay, let's take a break and sleep on this, right? I think sleep on something is a good advice in general. But there is so much basic trust and respect for the human being and for the value set that disagreements on content topics are not. They don't seem as big or as important. Right?
And then when you speak of values, I mean, that's something that really defines Careem. And obviously, I think everyone's had a chat with Careem drivers, Careem captains at some point of time. And they all, say that you've changed their lives. And that's, like Spider-Man, with great authority comes great responsibility. How does that shape your vision of Careem, the future of Careem? How does that play in?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. And as we were celebrating our 5 years, the one word that kept coming back was responsibility. There are approximately 300,000 captains and their families dependent on Careem today, right? So it's a big burden on our shoulders, and we hear this from captains from time to time. So oftentimes when I get in the car and they know who I am, they pray for me and my family that, look, we are so grateful that there's so many families, my family, my kids are going to school as a result of what you have done. So just as a good reminder that, look, there's a big responsibility towards these people who literally have built Careem, right? Careem would not be here if they had not joined and given their full heart and effort to make it happen. And we were always the underdog in the region, right?
Yep.
And we have been competing against like 10 times our balance sheet, and like even on the technology front, we have been relatively humble. And the thing that has really pulled us through is the devotion of these captains. They have given you, our customers, a better service compared to what the same captains give to competition, because of the bond and the emotional link that they have with us. So we are super, super grateful for their contributions and efforts, and we want to make sure that we recognize it and fulfill that responsibility towards them. But we also have a responsibility towards the region, we feel. Careem's mission is to build an awesome organization that inspires, in the region. So the full mission is, by the way, to simplify and improve the lives of people and to build an awesome organization that inspires.
Okay.
And given how far we have come, and it's a bit sad that we've already become one of the largest platforms internet platforms in the region, because I wish there were many more, but it has happened as a result of the whole ecosystem's support in bringing us this far.
Yeah.
And now we have a responsibility to the region and to the ecosystem as well to give back in some shape, right? So for example, I remember a year ago when the refugee crisis was at its peak, and this is such a regional topic, right? There are more refugees in this region than any other part of the world. We are the largest contributor of refugees and the largest host of refugees. We actually felt that this is a local problem that we need to own up to and do something about. So we partnered up with a refugee agency and we launched a car type in all of our markets where people could take those trips, and then some part of that money plus some matching goes to the refugees. So we want to make sure that we use our platform, our reach, our brand to also tackle some of the region's biggest issues. Because this is our region, we need to improve it. If you're not going to take this on, who else will? So there's a responsibility towards making the region better as well.
And then what is the future of Careem? And this is going to be my last question, and then we'll open it up. But we've heard reports of Careem prototypes coming out, partnerships with the RTA, you getting into like beyond, the Uber Eats type stuff, but into like more advanced stuff. So what is the vision of Careem? Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And obviously it's going to be 8x that, but in the interim.
Yeah, so we are thinking 2030. That's a magic number in the region, right?
Okay.
So everyone has a 2030.
Yeah, we are
so
building a 2030 vision
2020 and then there's Careem 2030.
We have a 2020 version as well, but that's a bit more incremental. So it's not as crystal clear yet because we're still in the process of drafting it. But we have we have a big opportunity in the region, and there is a big handicap. And the opportunity is one to use the internet to leapfrog into a better future. Internet is one of the best instruments for leapfrogging, right? We have done this with transportation a little bit, where it's actually more efficient to transport people through our type of systems than with buses and metros.
Correct.
Mobile phones did that for fixed telephony. E-commerce is doing this for shopping malls and commerce infrastructure. So we believe that internet can be a huge savior, can be a huge instrument of leapfrogging for the region. And the region needs to catch up, right?
Yeah.
We have 700 million people that live in the region. This is 10% of the world's population. And we have not built the infrastructure that other parts of the world were able to build to provide the quality of life for their people.
Absolutely.
So we want to make sure in some shape or form that we take full advantage of the internet as a leapfrogging mechanism to leapfrog the region into a better future. So that's the opportunity. Now the bottleneck is the following. This region is not one, right? It's not United States of America,
Exactly.
right? This region is made up of 20, 30 countries. And it's quite challenging to operate in the region in a seamless way. So you guys know this. To build internet services like Careem, you need certain building blocks, right? You need credit cards, you need payments, you need last mile delivery, you need messaging infrastructure, you need good maps, you need all of these building blocks that don't necessarily exist in our region at the same level of quality as needed.
Yeah.
So what we had to do in many cases, we had to build this infrastructure, right? We built our own places database on top of Google, of course. We have integrated with a lot of operators in the region to just be able to send reliable SMSs to our customers.
Yeah.
We've done payment integrations with Fawry in Egypt, One Card in Saudi, someone else in Pakistan. So, the building blocks are missing, which ends up creating a lot more work to build these services. And, with that more work comes more resource requirements. You need more engineers, more product managers, more funding, but that's not available, right?
Yeah.
So there's a huge opportunity to leapfrog, but the region, the way it's structured, the lack of building blocks and the lack of building blocks that tie across the region is hampering the growth. So we are trying to figure out what role can we play in bringing the cost of launching these services down. Just like, let's say, Google has done it for marketing. Startups can market a lot more efficiently using Google. Google Cloud is doing for infrastructure. What can we do to enable more internet commerce to happen in the region and over time leapfrog us into a better future?
Fabulous. Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It's great to hear from captains that they're very grateful for the thing you enabled for them. And I don't want to ruin that in any way. What I find interesting is that you say they're very grateful. In my experience, I see them with two phones, Uber and Careem. So one is, what do you think is happening with loyalty in the gig economy? And what are you trying to do to get people to use Careem more, captains to use Careem more? And thirdly, do you care? Because potentially it doesn't matter as long as you get enough demand on your platform, then the captains will automatically select your platform.
Yeah, no, I think this is a good question. And I think mostly in Dubai is a demand constrained market. There's not a shortage of supply. So from a captain's perspective, it's a rational choice to have both devices so that they can get more work. So, if I wear the captain's hat and if I want what's best for the captain, then we should allow them to have both devices. Now, over time, when we have so much work that they can afford not to have a second device, we're happy to try and encourage them to just have one device. But for now, it is the reality of the market. And I've had some captains, this is actually very beginning when competition was coming to market. This is 2013, and we had been working with some captains for some time. When competition came in, they invited a lot of our captains and they offered them insane amounts of money not to work with us. And many captains, of course, we had built that relationship with them, turned them down. But there were some captains that called me personally and said, look, I want to let you know that I really appreciate working with you and everything that you've done for me and my family. but I need to look out for my family as well, and this is a great offer. So they were basically grudgingly, like they didn't want to, but there was so much money at stake, and these guys have such low buffers on their financial freedom that they have to do it, and we understand and respect it.
Hi. So my question is about work culture. So as you've gone through this phase of crazy growth, many new offices, new people, how have you made sure that the core values of Careem live in each and every office with each and every new employee?
So it's a great question, and it's something that I think we are struggling with every single day. It is hard to first of all, it's hard to just capture the culture in something that you can easily share, and then it's hard to spread it. I think from maybe a bit of history or context, the first thing we did on the first day of starting Careem, which was the first of Ramadan in 2012, Mudassir came to my place in Abu Dhabi. And the first thing we did was we sat down and we wrote our values. So that was the first thing we did. And then those values have evolved a little bit, and so has the culture. But I think at the core of the culture are these elements of essentially three elements. The first element is that we really want to do something meaningful, and we really want to be of service to, whether it's of service to our customers, to our captains, to our fellow colleagues. We want to be of service. The second is this sort of crazy, ambitious, let's shoot for the moon type of notion, that if you're going to do something, why do it small, right? And the third one is the idea of ownership. We want everyone to feel like a co-founder. We want everyone to feel like this is Careem is theirs, right? You're not an employee, right? So we talk about this. We have our values codified, and we're going through a values refresh right now, because I think they, as the organization evolves, we probably need to polish them a little bit or adapt them a little bit. We try to celebrate our values. We try as much as possible to talk about our values and embed them in how we do things. I think values needs to become part of the process as you do, or if you want to care for the captain first, then make sure that someone is raising that flag every time you meet to talk about anything. It gets increasingly harder with multiple locations. I think for a relatively young organization, we're 5 years old and we are in 13 countries, 80 cities. We don't have offices everywhere, but we have a lot. I don't even know how many offices. We have a lot of offices.
A lot of them.
Yeah. And making sure that sort of goes everywhere, it's tricky. We have, I think you guys probably do all of the same, right? We have weekly all hands where we really try to get everyone together and so that everyone hears the same story and the same values. But yeah, it's work in progress. It's work in progress. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think this is one of those things that's harder than people think it is, but it's super important.
Yeah.
Super
Thank you.
Yes, please.
What's your view on autonomous transport, and how is it going to affect your captains in the long term? What's your story to them and the market?
We can't hear the question, sorry.
Yeah.
So,
So the question was on autonomous transport and its potential impact on our captains. So, our view is that other than some parts of the region, Dubai and maybe Saudi, it's going to take a while for it to happen, both from the perspective of labor is relatively cheap and the cost of the autonomous will be high at the beginning, and second, the traffic maybe is a bit more unpredictable in some cities, so the technology has to evolve a bit for it to be functional. So we have a bit more time, maybe other than one or two markets. And for now, there's such a huge problem of youth unemployment in the region that we want to get as many people behind the wheel making money as possible, so that we take them away from other non-productive pursuits. So we are purely focused on let's create as many jobs as we can, as fast as we can. And then in parallel, we have recently started a social impact and sustainability unit, which is looking at how do we make sure that the families of our captains and the captains themselves get the required education they need, so that over time they don't just depend on this as the form of living. So we will, we have done some things already, but some bolder initiatives will come out on the education front for our captains and their families in the near future, so that they're not dependent on it.
So talking of behind the wheel, does the Saudi, women driving, how does that affect you? Is that going to affect you?
This is great news.
Okay.
Yeah, this is great news. We are all very excited, despite many people feeling that we will be negatively impacted. We just believe that, one, this is the right thing to do, and we should just always be on the right side. And second, more practically, this is just going to create a more open and more mobile society, and this will benefit us tremendously in the long run. But I think, we have celebrated that announcement.
Yeah.
We hope that the first woman driving in Saudi will be a captain.
With Careem, that would be amazing.
So, but the numbers are huge. I mean, there's estimates that about somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million women in Saudi today would want to be part of the workforce, but they are not, because they don't have a way to get to and from work.
Wow.
So we are trying to do our bit there, but this is going to be a huge step.
Game changer.
Game changer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, please.
So I have a question with respect to the Emirates here. Do you have Emirati drivers?
So in the Emirates, I would say all our captains are expat captains. We have one friend, Emirati Khaled, who drove for a day to show that this is actually something great. But I think obviously in other countries it's different. But one example that is quite remarkable is about a year and a half ago in Saudi, all our captains in Saudi, they were expat captains as well, right? And the idea that a Saudi would be a captain was almost unthinkable, right? And I think it was unthinkable both for there was some stigma around driving as a profession, and there was also some cultural considerations about having a Saudi man in the same car as a Saudi woman who is our primary customer in Saudi. So that was sort of that was an almost unthinkable thought. And then a few things happened. We realized that if we wanted to continue growing, we needed to get more captains, and there were a lot of Saudis that were prime candidates. Economic times with the low oil prices also created a need for a lot of people to have an additional income. And then our sort of continuing spreading the message that this is actually this you can be your own entrepreneur. So we finally started to getting few Saudi captains, but we saw in the beginning that it was not really socially acceptable. Cancellation rates was higher when customers got a Saudi captain, and so we were this experiment. We were like, maybe this will not. Let's see how this works. And now, a year and a half later, I don't know the latest number, but
95%.
yeah, 95% of our captains. So basically, all our growth over the last year and a half has been Saudi captains.
Wow.
So, like, witnessing that social change over a year and a half is just like completely remarkable. So, but yeah, we have to push a bit on this in the UAE.
And I think in some markets what we've also seen is it's a relatively conservative part of the world, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of men have never been in such close proximity with a girl that was not their mother, wife, or sister.
Yeah.
So, it is creating some interesting dynamics as well. They get in the car, and some of these guys don't know how to
React,
right? And sometimes very non-intentional gestures can be seen as threatening. So, we undergo, because of this social change that is unraveling as a result of it, we're having to train them about basic things. These are the words that you use to address a female. This is something that you cannot do. And it's not like they're doing this out of malintent. It is just like they don't know, right? Because they've never been in that position, in that situation. So it's fascinating the kind of social change that is happening in the society as a result of it.
And just as recently as today, right, we have this weekly all hands, and in every all hands we try to have a captain be part of it, either in the office or as some other office. And today we had two female captains who joined us from Tanta in Egypt, and it was mother and daughter. And they were both driving for Careem, using the same car, doing different shifts, and they were super excited. And they spoke to us about how this is changing perception, and that it's a great way for people to enter the workplace, right? And because it's flexible, you can do it at your own time and your own boundaries. So yeah, it's exciting what's happening.
Where are they driving? In Egypt? Or?
In Tanta,
Yeah, in Tanta, in Egypt. Yeah.
Bilal, you had a question?
So all looks to be like smooth sailing throughout those 5 years. It's very rosy and beautiful. I'd be interested to hear about the toughest moments in the past 5 years. Like at what point maybe you thought about quitting, or maybe you did not have such moments. But what were the toughest moments for each of you?
I think the question is which ones to start with.
Yeah, exactly.
It's never a smooth ride, right?
There's been many tough moments. I think the easier or the obvious ones, I think, are raising money in the region has never been. It's not easy. It's still not easy. But I think for every round of funding we have raised, it took a very long time, and we were sort of out of money at the brink of survival every single time. And in the early days, we could maybe plug it by putting a little bit of our savings in there. But then, as you grow bigger, you cannot, you don't have enough savings to plug the hole, right? And the feeling of responsibility for our colleagues, for our captains, for our customers, and realizing that, man, what's going to happen? That's been tough, stressful, but not necessarily feeling, hey, I'm gonna quit doing this. But that stress has been intense over the years, right? I don't know what else.
Yeah, I think that's funding. I had more funding related stresses as well.
I also think, if I may continue,
Yeah, go ahead.
there has been, I think the first time we had a fatal accident in one of our cars. The first time was actually a captain who was not on a ride with Careem, but he was a Careem captain and he was doing something else. But he had an accident and fortunately passed away. And then it just gets very real, right? Like we look at all these growth dashboards, and we care a lot for our captains. We spend a lot of time with them, but that was a moment of, wow, this is really real. And are we doing everything we can to keep our customers and captains safe? I mean, so yeah, that was a tough moment for me.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Just wanted to know, starting from UAE, what's your relationship with the government, RTA, where is it going, and the region as well?
So I think our relationship with most governments is very healthy. It doesn't always start healthy, but I think after we explain to them the benefits that we can bring to the cities and the countries, it becomes much better. But at the very fundamental level, as we discussed a bit earlier, we are building the public transport system in the cities, which in most cases doesn't exist, and there's a big need to build that infrastructure, and the governments don't have the fiscal space in many cases to build it, so they recognize the value that's being added. And second, unemployment is a huge issue in most markets, and when they start looking at some of the numbers that have been done already or some of the numbers that can be done, then they turn around that perspective. Now, of course, there are some vested interest in every city. In some cities, there are larger vested interests than others. But for the most part, we're not disrupting anything, if you think of it, right? We are filling a void that existed in our markets. So in most of our markets, there weren't buses, metros, or even big taxi systems before we entered those markets. So we're really enabling it for the first time versus disrupting. So in the UAE, we have a good relationship with the RTA. We were the first ones to sign up to be regulated. We've done the same in Saudi. We're doing the same in Egypt, Pakistan, Jordan. So we do recognize that what we are doing is important enough that it needs to be regulated, and we just want to make sure that the regulation does not stifle innovation and does not stifle growth of this platform and the impact that it can make.
Have you considered having a loyalty program, and if yes, why don't you have it?
So, have we considered a loyalty program? Yes.
Just a bit of background, because I use Careem like 3 times a day maybe. And every time I ask myself, like, these guys should have a loyalty program.
So, so I think it's a great question. I think it's a matter of having the resources to make it happen. As you guys know, there is a lot of takes a lot of great minds to build stuff, and there's so many things we need to build, even in the core. Like our Captain app needs to get so much better. Our customer app could need some polish. Our core sort of marketplace engine that does the dispatching. So it's definitely something that we would love to look at and do. We recognize the value of loyal customers. I think the sort of stopgap that we have been doing, as you know, is that we have partnered with a few other loyalty programs so that you can both earn points with them, or if you have points with someone else, convert it into Careem, put it into your wallet and use Careem. But yes, it's on the long list.
Perfect. One last question, Rania.
So you talked about building an awesome organization, but you had some challenges and some very public challenges with certain hires. What have you learned from that, and how do you retain your talent?
Yeah, I can go.
So I think the general learning on building and when we think about building an awesome organization, what does that mean? And I think Mudassir has this inspirational vision of building an institution that actually produces world-class products and services, an institution that cares for the community, an institution that will outlast us and everyone else. And there's a fourth dimension of building and an institution is a company that actually produces leaders. So people will come to Careem for a while, whether they stay for a year or 10 years, or they will graduate and go out and do other amazing stuff. Like Google, we look up to Google being a leadership factory. Now, how do you make that happen? And I think it's all about the people. And it's about making sure that you have 100% alignment on the values of what you're trying to do, right? I think that's the biggest learning, and that you have particularly with the leaders that are going to influence a lot of people, that you have an alignment on what's the culture we're aspiring to create here, what does that mean, what does it not mean, and because there's no rights and wrongs on culture, but I think we have starting to have a pretty strong view of this is the culture we want, and it will not work for everyone.
Last question. Yeah. You were about to say
Go for it.
If you think about creating another business, which one would be?
2040.
Fish farms, yeah.
Let me go first. For me, it would be a school, education. It's what the region needs most, and I think would love to figure out a way that we can educate more and more people in the region to go out and realize their full potential. There are a lot of intrinsic abilities that are not getting the right polish and impact.
Magnus, are you still thinking?
Yeah, I think if I knew that I wanted to do something else, then I would not be at Careem anymore, I feel. Like, because then I would go pursue that. Because I'm of the belief that if you know what your purpose is, you have to follow it. You cannot waste your time doing something else. So for now, I feel what we are doing, and we're still just starting, but I feel that using the platform of Careem to continue to improve people's lives. And transportation is one, and there's a lot of adjacencies that we're looking at and that will follow. But yeah, so it's still on the path of online to offline, helping people to, we're creating income generating opportunities for people. That's amazing. Like we're not entertaining people, we're allowing people to make a living. And I'm super excited about that.
Thank you so much for taking time out and talking with us. We have a small something for you. You know.
Oh,
Google
wow.
Cardboard.
Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I was really hoping that they were giving us the next business ideas, and we're always going to be investors there.
And I think also, I know Neil was traveling. I think from the very early days, we've had a lot of support from you guys as well. You know, there were early days when we might have used some. This should probably be off record. We might have had some slightly hacked version of some API key and stuff. And we always got the support to make sure that we could be up and running and continue to run. You know, even when we had to call in the middle of the night to wake up people and get support, right? So I think we've gotten a lot of support, and we're very grateful for that.
And inspiration as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.